Elijah and Elisha are walking, and Elijah knows that he's going to be taken up into heaven. And as they reach a certain point along the way, Elijah turns to Elisha and says, "You stay here." And Elijah says, "No, I'm going with you." Elijah is trying to spare Elisha, and Elisha does not want to lose his master, his mentor, his teacher. He wants to stay with him unto the very end. He's grieving. He's hurting. He's sad. Which makes the company of prophets cold-blooded when they say to him, "You know your master is going to die today, right?" And he says, "Yes, I know. What is your deal?" They go to the next place. "Elisha, you stay here." "No, I'm going to go with you." Company of prophets, "Hey, you know your master's going to die today, right?" What is it in us that compels us to do this kind of thing? Why do we insist on raining on others' parades? And this is more than raining on somebody's parade. I don't have an equivalent to this. I don't know anybody that cold-blooded, thanks be to God, that cold-hearted, that would say, "You know they're going to die today, right?" When I was five or six, I lost my first tooth. And I was incredibly excited because the tooth fairy would come visit. And my neighbor, she had lost her tooth, and the tooth fairy brought her $5. Now, $5 in 1982 money was a lot of money. And I had the Sears catalog dog-eared and circled. I knew all the things I was going to get with my $5. I was going to be able to get Green Army Men and a G.I. Joe and a Lego, and it might have been a little over $5, but I had some wiggle room, and I was so excited, and I'm at school, and I'm talking, and I say, "Oh, the tooth fairy's coming tonight. I'm going to get $5. And one of the kids says, "There's no tooth fairy." And I said, "Excuse me?" I didn't say, "Excuse me." I was 5 or 6. I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "There's no tooth fairy. That's your mom or dad putting money under the pillow." And I said, "You are absolutely wrong. It is the tooth fairy, and she brings money. I don't know where you got your information, but there is a tooth fairy, and she will bring me $5. I go home that afternoon, and I go to my mom, and I said, "Mom, I heard there's no tooth fairy." And she said, "That's nonsense. There is absolutely a tooth fairy." I said, "Oh, good." Because I really want my $5. I don't know what her expression was when I said that, but I imagine her eyes rolled fairly big. And the next morning I woke up. I put my tooth under my pillow. I woke up and there was an envelope under my pillow, and it was written in silver ink, and from the tooth fairy to Jason, and I was so excited. And I opened the envelope, and I didn't read the letter, and I looked inside, and there was a quarter. I said, "Mom, the tooth fairy exists, but she only brought me a quarter." And Mom said, "Well, be glad for your quarter." I'm sure I'm not the only one with this experience. Other kids in school saying such and such doesn't exist, such and such is fake or pretend or isn't real. That person isn't actually flying. There are wires. It's not magic. It's sleight of hand. People who just want to bring darkness into our lives, who want to take the joy away from us. Yesterday, Jennifer said, "You know, I've never heard a howl." I said, "What are you talking about, a howl?" And she said, "You know, when one dog starts barking and then begins to howl, and then all the other neighborhood dogs begin to howl." I've never heard that. And I said, "Ugh, it's awful. Every time a siren goes by in a neighborhood full of dogs, they all begin to howl. You don't want to hear that." Yes, she does. She's never heard it. And I realized at that moment, who am I to say that you don't want to hear a howl? She might love it. Just because it bothers me, because I grew up next to yappy dogs and had yappy dogs, doesn't mean it will bother her. She had no yappy dogs in her life growing up. So why do we do that? Why do we say, "That's not what you think it is. That's not real. That's going to go away. Your mentor, your teacher, your loved one is going to die"? Why do we insist on bringing one another down? Bringing down others doesn't do anything for us. Paul writes in his letter that in the beginning, God brought light out of the darkness. God brought light out of the darkness, and we are to be that light to one another. We are to be servants of Christ to one another, slaves to one another. We are called to bring joy into each other's lives. We are called to build one another up. We are called to see each other as children of God, brothers and sisters in Christ. When we see somebody, we don't say, "Your socks don't match." We say instead, "It is so good to see you." We say instead, "This sun is beautiful." We say instead, "I'm glad you're here." And if we can't manage any of that, we can salute and move on. I don't know about y'all, but every time I receive a salute, I am happy as a clam, which apparently are pretty happy. There's no need to bring darkness into this world. There's enough darkness. There's enough anger, enough bitterness, enough hate. But there's too little light, too little joy, too little love. God has given us the gift, the opportunity to bring that love, that light to one another, to bring joy to one another, to bring light into the world. What an amazing gift. What an amazing trust God has in us. So let us bring light into the world. Let us bring love into the world. Let us raise one another up. Be slaves to Christ, servants to one another.